Cominciata la partita? Adesso? Perfetto.
The North Code. The North Code.
Ciao Canada.
As 2013 comes to a close, we close the chapter on probably the most memorable derby win in all of our history as SS Lazio, but also the time for change is in the air. And to speak on that, a fellow member of Lazio Club Canada here, Mark Fantuzzi, to help us all break it down. Looking forward to 2014.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. Thanks for joining us. Let's get right into it then.
Okay.
On his way out, we'll start with Petkovic. He's going out looking like in the fashion that leaves Lazio well off, 20 points in 10th spot and worse shape than he took over. So before we go into Reja, let's talk Petko, because by all intents and purposes, we can agree that a change was needed. And that, for me personally, I think the way Petko leaves me with a sour taste in my mouth for a few different reasons, and you can get into what you think. But between management losing the plot, so it's not so much Petko, but management losing the plot and this quote-unquote project not materializing, and then the deception part of Petko from like an outside observer, people think he looks like a gentleman, but on another perspective is he kind of screwed over Lotito. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big... the projects are overrated, for lack of a better term, for lack of a better phrase. But anyway, a couple things there. First of all, I wouldn't have expected him to leave like that, but I mean, I guess he got the call up for his national team. I know it's modern football and that's the way it goes, but it would have been nice for him to say, look, I'm moving on, and that's it, a little earlier, a little while back, rather than wait till this point. I don't know, he does beg the question whether or not he was preoccupied with the job that he knew was coming, and by the end, the last 3 or 4 weeks, everybody knew it was coming. So, I mean, how much did that play into Lazio's problems on the field? Because for a while there, last, I would say, 5, 6, 7 games, maybe even more. I mean, a lot of people have pointed out statistics that basically since January of this year, if you look at his numbers over the last year, that he's basically brought, the numbers he's produced are dismal, right? What are we talking about,
Especially, you mean like on the away side, like how we haven't won it, like maybe more than 2 away games, I think, in all of 2013.
I think we won 1 all year, and since
in the
January,
calendar year,
2 or 3, something like that. I mean, I think a lot of that, has been like we discussed before, has been masked by the fact that we won the Derby, which is no question a big win, and he did have a knack for winning derbies. But at the end of the day, I mean, you look at his numbers, and over the since January, Lazio has been bottom 17. You know what I mean? So, the fact that he's leaving is should be no surprise to anybody. The bigger issue to me, anyway, is that. Seems strange that the team, the management who knew he was leaving, pretty much by the sounds of it, everybody was sort of aware that he was leaving. Lotito says that, well, I spoke to him and he said no, he wasn't. That he, whatever. I mean, give me a break. I think everybody and their mother knew that he was leaving. So why are we in the situation where we limp into Christmas, battered and bruised, and suddenly he signs for this national team, and Lotito looks like he's completely unprepared for any of this. That's the part that I find strange, because you would have imagined that a lot of this planning this progression planning would have gone on way before. So I don't know. like I said, I've always said I would have liked to see Mihailovic come back. Nothing against Reja, but why wasn't that opportunity pursued before, knowing that Petko was likely to be leaving? So I don't know. Seems strange to me.
And that's just another part of management losing the plot. And then, you got Petko on one side saying, I'll continue to be a Lazio manager. I mean, if you ask him when he takes over that Swiss job, you're going to hear him say, it wasn't my intention to leave. The club forced me out. And yet here's another legal battle potentially for Lotito to add to the long list of things. And this is not somebody you want to put a legal battle against, because when you look back in the history books, we're going to open up and Petko will be there for that epic May 26th final.
Yeah, I know it doesn't. It's not the nicest thing to have somebody who is. However you want to look at it, this is now part of our history. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, derby victory in the history of the Roman derby. And now you got to always think about the fact that forever you're going to have to consider, well, yeah, that coach is also the guy we had to end up suing, and he walked away, and he didn't necessarily leave with pats on the backs and good luck for everybody. But it's not the nicest thing. I guess what are you going to do? At the end of the day, he chose to leave. I don't like the idea. I certainly don't like the idea of him trying to argue that he can do both jobs at once. I'm not convinced that in today's modern football you can really have a coach who's going to coach two teams at once. Something's going to give. He could only coach one team and give full attention to one team at any given time. And now you're talking about midweek games, Europa League, Serie A, and then on top of it, you want to worried about what lineup you're going to be fielding for international games. That's ridiculous. I don't see how anybody in their right mind could think that you could do both of those jobs at the same time and do either one of them justice.
So is it wrong of me to be upset the way he's going out, in the sense that I'm left with this terrible taste in my mouth? I'm angry with a person who's brought us joy less than 6 months ago, and then I'm pointing fingers at management too, and it's like a ring around the rosy of just a debacle across the board, where more things look like it's going to come out, where coaches don't necessarily want to come into the environment. Because if you look across forums, people had there was no hidden desire that they didn't want Petko to leave. Like, people aren't going to say, oh no, we didn't want him to leave, because you could see from the on-field product that it just wasn't there. People are rolling around doing whatever they feel like out there, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of order. It's like he sabotaged kind of the way the people play in the dressing room onto the field. And then people want certain players, certain coaches to come back in, and now we're talking about Reja. So for me, we're bringing in Reja to clean up this mess that he made, because Reja didn't really leave us in the situation that Petko did, and that's why I'm upset.
Quite the contrary, actually, Reja left us in a great position.
Exactly.
I mean, and I know we didn't make the Champions League like he had hoped. I mean, we were very, very, very close, and definitely a competitive team. Look, I think that I'd like to think anyway, but with Lotito, you never really do know. But I would like to believe that had we lost, God forbid, the Derby, Coppa Italia, the Coppa Italia Derby, I have to believe that he would have been fired there at the end of the season. You know what I mean? So now then, I'm not certain of that, but I'd like to believe that. I would hope that at that stage, given the way the season ended with for us, which was a massive collapse after January. I know we did all right in the Europa League, which, again, I mean, you have to give Petko credit for that. He did manage to, take us. We're the only team. We're the first Italian team to get to the quarters, to the quarters of the Europa League since it was reformatted a couple years ago. That's great. I mean, you look at what the other Italian teams did. Do we have to point out the Udineses and the Romas of the world who regularly crash out of the tournament against
lesser opposition?
Say, stellar sides. So I mean, you got to give him the credit for that. So I think that anyway, he probably would have been fired after that if we lost. But given that we won and we didn't do too badly in the Europa League, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of Lotito's decisions. I don't know. I think it's kind of one of those tough decisions where it's like, do you can him right there and then, saying, you took us far in the Champions League, the Europa League, and we did win the Coppa Italia, but you didn't do well enough in the season in the second half, so we're tossing you. I don't know that you can do that. I think that at that point you probably have to give Peko the chance to try to do something, build on that victory in the next season. But by the time we rolled around to October and we hadn't won a game on the road, or we won one game on the road, at that point I think it was probably time to say, okay, clearly it's not working out. The other teams have figured him out. He's a bit of a one-trick pony, and it's not working out. It's just not working out, and it wasn't. I mean, by the end, it was just. I mean, we watched the games. It was embarrassing.
By this time,
no tactics whatsoever. No strategy.
By this time last year, I think we can both agree that a lot of teams figured out Petko's strategies, which weren't a whole heck of a lot between the changing of the formations, and we had a new formation. It seemed like every week, and the only real thing I can say is he changed the culture of training, I think, when he first came in, and everybody was a little bit more fit. We didn't see as many injuries, I guess you could say, under his regime as you did with Reja. But, I mean, regardless of that, Reja comes back. I don't think that was the plan for Lotito and company. So I have to believe that this is a step backwards, but also like a desperation attempt from Lotito and management. And for Reja, it's the perfect opportunity for him to vindicate himself one more time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if I would call it a step backwards, but it definitely does to me indicate management that is unprepared or was unprepared for what should happen next, and that's a problem because you would imagine, in the grand scheme of things, that if you're running a major city outfit, that you would have some idea what would come next, what should come next. You have some sort of backroom communications, back channel communications happening. How do you get to the point where, like I said, it was clear to everybody 4, 5, 6 weeks ago that it looked like Peko was unsavable, unsalvageable. He was just, and then the story came out about the Swiss national team job, and that seemed to be more evidence that his head really wasn't.
You start connecting the dots.
Point, why did it take this long? Why did we get to the Christmas break and we're scrambling looking for a coach? It's like, I don't understand. You would have imagined that a major city outfit would have some sense of, okay, this is the next guy. This is who we're going to go for. Seems weird. I don't think it's anything against Reja. I mean, if that decision was made 2 months ago and we said we're going to go back to Reja, that's fine with me. Whatever, not a problem. I don't necessarily think we always have to. There's no. I mean, I don't. It's not written in stone that you have to get a new coach. There's no such thing. You can't go back. That's nonsense. But the manner in which this was done, I think, probably struck a lot of people as rather haphazard and ad hoc. Let's just okay, Reja. Okay, it's like, seriously.
And even the way it's gone on, we haven't really officially fired Petkovic either. If you think about it, there was a secret meeting, some say, just after the game against Verona last week, and then Petko goes on his way and he says, "Let's see what Babbo Natale has in store for me." And then before you know it, Eddie Reja is confirming that he's going to be the coach. So in essence, we technically have two coaches confirmed to stay on right now. Now we don't really know what the future holds, and some people will be upset with the reappointment of Reja. And you know what? Especially considering the fact that he tried to resign twice while he was here throughout a year and a half. I know you're a supporter of Reja. He doesn't play the nicest style of football, but at this point, we're in desperate need of grinding out some victories and getting back in the top 5.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you would ask me 2 years ago, I would say, okay, it's nice, we move on. And from Reja, I was kind of tired of his style. But I guess it's one of those things where the grass is always greener on the other side, sort of thing. Because you look back now, and you say to yourself, honestly, after that game, to me anyway, after that game against Verona, where we were, just absolute Verona, the Napoli game, where it just looked like we just couldn't do anything to keep the ball out of our own net. And I'm saying to myself, you know what? I'd rather watch Reja any day of the week and at least we're not giving up goals, we're not bleeding goals left, right, and center, then watch this. I mean, that was terrible. That last game against Verona was horrible. Pretty much every time they got a chance, it went in. I mean, it's not like Verona created a lot. They had basically 4 chances or 5 chances, and they put 4 of them in the net. It was terrible.
How concerned are you about Reja coming back and then all of a sudden the likes of Keita, Felipe Anderson, Pereira, basically the nuances and all these new guys that have been brought in over the summer, this big transfer spending, where do they fit into these plans?
I don't know. To a certain extent, Mike, I think that this whole idea of Reja, Reja doesn't like young kids, or he doesn't understand them, or he doesn't know how to use them. I think that's a little bit overblown, because you remember, this is also a guy who, before he got his starting, basically his starter's position with Lazio, Nazi, that is, before he got his, Petco made him a starter. It was Reja who said something like, watching that guy play, said something like, we gotta make sure that this guy's we lock him down somewhere at Formello, because we don't want this guy to leave. So I don't know. We're looking at, who are we really talking about here? We're talking about Keita, we're talking about Onati. Both of those guys would not be old enough to play under Reja. So I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I don't know that he could have played those players. It's not like these guys were sitting around ready to go, under Reja's, first round, first tour of duty at Lazio. Those guys, they were younger. They were even younger. I mean, Keita's what, 19? Well, Nazi's 21. So that means, you take a year or 2 years, respectively, depending when you're talking about off of those guys. It just, I don't know. I don't know that Reja didn't want to play them. I think they just weren't ready. It wasn't until Petco got there that they were maybe ready, and for sure Reja has something to do with that. And I mean, I don't know. Right now, he's already made some statements about Keita being a guy that he's, he really wants to he really wants to lean on in this new formation and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't know that that's true. The other problem is, remember that the first time Reja came to Lazio, we were, I mean, the things are bad now, but they were,
far worse before, yeah.
We
Without
had one
question.
foot in Serie B when Reja showed up the first time. So I don't know. If you're a coach, if I'm a coach and I show up and that's the atmosphere, and the team is literally on life support, who are you gonna turn to? At that point, I think, you have to turn to your experienced veterans. I think you're gonna turn to Ledesma and the Rockies, and Flaherty came in at that time, and I think you're gonna do that. It's a little different when you maybe have, I mean, it's not a great season, but I think that a lot of the talk about relegation is maybe a little bit blown out of proportion. I don't think that we're
No.
going to be relegated, but you know what I mean. I don't think
You can't convince me that this team is even in the cusp of relegation when you see the likes of Sassuolo out there and
No, exactly.
yeah.
Bologna is horrible.
Yeah,
Terrible.
there's
They're
just so
horrible.
many bad teams out there this
Monaco,
year.
I mean, just horrifically bad teams.
And you can just see it from the Classifica. There's such a big diversion between the top 3 or top 4 in points wise versus the bottom 3. Like, it's not even close this year. We're talking about 3 different classes of teams this year.
I don't think we're that desperate. So, I mean, I think that, my point was that, given what he had the first time he showed up at Lazio 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, I think we're talking about a completely different scenario. And so I think he maybe got that reputation for not maybe using youth or not working youth into the team as effectively as he could. But I think at that time there wasn't much you could do. I'm not sure that anybody would walk into a dressing room with those players and say, yeah, you know what, I think I'm going to let me take a gamble on Onasi, who would have been like 19 at the time. That, that's not the way to that's not the way to save a club from relegation. So it's a little bit of a different situation this time around, and I guess we'll see. I don't know.
It's a different,
it's overblown.
It's a different Reja, I guess, the way he's coming in, because he's coming into a situation or environment where they need him, once again, more than he needs the club, but he also has a lot more of a larger roster, something that he didn't have the luxury of doing before. and he kind of has carte blanche in the situation. But the smell inside Formello is what concerns me when players or coaches are saying that there's something wrong there. And I don't want to believe that my club is worse than any other club. But what does the future hold, in your opinion, for a guy like Iliatade? Because he's been linked with Inter all like since, I guess, September, we can say, and like all of a sudden now things are trickling out, and we've known already that Tade and Ray have had their quarrels because of the transfer strategies. And what's to say now if Tade's already negotiated in a similar fashion like Petko to go off to Inter? What's stopping him from sabotaging our transfer campaign this January?
Well, at the end of the day, he has to answer to Lotito, and he's not leaving. So, I don't think Lotito. Lotito's a lot of things, but he's not. He's not an idiot. So, to say he's gonna. I don't think, for the record, I don't think that Petco sabotaged the season. I just think that he was preoccupied, and I think then, by the end, let's say the last 3 months, you could see the writing on the wall. He probably wasn't going to last till Christmas, and then when the Swiss national team came sniffing around for him, I think that at that point he started to realize, hey, my point is, I think it's natural. Just what's the motivation for him at that point, right? You know what I mean? And I think that once players start to hear that kind of thing, this guy's going to be, probably not going to make till Christmas. Even if he makes it through Christmas, he's probably not going to be around in June, or after June, rather. It's probably natural that, players start to, listen a little less. Maybe he doesn't have the same motivation to look for creative solutions to the problems that were unfolding on the field. I know. You can like Tade one way or the other, but it's a little bit different than the coach's role, because the coach ultimately has to find a way to motivate his team throughout the week to get them to play that game on Sunday, Saturday, whatever, right? With Tade, at the end of the day, I don't see him necessarily sabotaging anything, or I just don't think he's going to do that. He's a professional at the end of the day. You can say what you want about him. I don't think he's that bad of a general manager.
No, if he's being linked with the likes, if he's been linked with the likes of Inter, then obviously he's been doing something right.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're objective, at the end of the day, he's the sporting director. He's only going to be able to work with whatever money the owner is going to give him. And Lotito, let's face it, is notoriously fickle and tight with money. And he's, so at the end of the day, look at the guys that Tade. Tade's done well to be able to bring players to the team that ultimately were kind of unheard of. Lichtsteiners, the Musletas of the world, even Hernandez and others. He's Candreva. He's proven that he can find guys. He can find those diamonds in the rough, or those players who are sort of on the margins but still have a lot of potential. I think that if he went to a team like Inter, he'd probably do very well, where he would basically be able to spend a lot more and not worry so much about budgetary restraints and all the other sort of restraints, moral and otherwise, that Lotito, sort of imposes on his sporting director. I'm sure, and my point is, I'm sure Lotito's not an easy person to work for. But, I think he'll do his job. Whether he goes or not in June, I don't think it's going to make that big of a deal, because at the moment, he's the general manager or the sporting director of Lazio, and that's it. Like I said, it's not like a coach that has to have that enthusiasm day in and day out. He doesn't see the players really. He's not going to be the guy trying to motivate them. He's not the one developing tactics, watching tape, trying to find holes in the other team's strategies. He doesn't have to do that. So, it's a little bit of a different, for me anyway, I would imagine it's probably a different, it's a different mentality, which doesn't really matter one way or the other, whether he's leaving in June, he knows he's leaving, or he doesn't know, whatever, right? The other thing that we sort of glossed over, I wanted to mention about Reja and this whole thing about, Reja not being effective at utilizing young players. And that is that the latest report today suggested that his his assistant coach is going to be Bolini.
Alberto Bolini, yes.
Yeah. So, I think that's a very powerful symbol, or very powerful sign, rather, by the team, by the management, to say we do understand that maybe Reja might have some of these deficiencies, some of these defects, but we're going to take every
step
possible
necessary, yeah.
precaution to make sure that maybe
Youth doesn't go unnoticed.
Pardon?
That youth doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, I mean, and Bolini has proven to do. I mean, look, this is a guy who won the Primavera Scudetto, the Primera Scudetto for Lazio last year. I mean,
Twice, actually, in his career, yeah.
He developed. I mean, from Rossi to Cara to Keita to Onazzi, all these guys, you throw in there Cavanda and even Diakite. These are all guys that ultimately Bolini has his fingerprints all over, right? So I think that's a good thing. And it looks like Inzaghi is going to be, Simone Inzaghi is going to be pushed up to the Primavera team. So he's been doing good things with the under-16 team, the Allievi, as they call them.
Yeah, so all is not really lost in everything. We're not in the worst of spots, we can both agree. But going forward to 2014, what do you expect? Are we talking about Reja through 2015? What are we talking about for, like, what can we leave on a good note, I guess, going forward?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I watched a lot of the games this year, or should I say, while I was watching a lot of the games this year, I repeatedly, thought to myself, like, this team shouldn't be this bad. Like, I think everybody will agree that for Lazio to do this badly, it's a shock. Like, this team should not. I mean, no one's. We're not delusional. No one thinks they should be top three. But you would have imagined them at the beginning of the year. I think everybody imagined them fighting for that fifth, sixth, seventh spot, right? And instead, they're floundering against teams like Sassuolo and Chievo. And my point is that I mean, it's hard to imagine how they could do worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if that's optimism, I suppose, then take it as such. But I'm not sure how they could do worse. Like, this team should not be doing. I know, okay, it's a team on paper, and on paper, paper players play paper games. But at the end of the day, this is there's no reason for Lazio to be doing this badly. So I think that Reja will have an impact probably. Relatively quickly, right? Even the fact that a lot of the players recognize him, they respect him, they know what he wants, they know what he. So that's going to help because if it's a brand new coach, there's a little bit of that
honeymoon period.
That period of feeling each other out and figuring out what everybody wants, and the way the way messages are given and received, and what it's going to what the coach expects and all that. What players. What's the best way to approach players? And all that stuff has to happen. But with Reja, the good thing is most of the players know exactly who he is. They know what he wants. They know how he operates. They know his expectations. Already they're talking about potentially rebirth of Hernandez, who's going to be pushed further forward now again, rather than, towards the sort of the trequartista role, which Petko didn't really play him that often, that far forward, tended to play him a little further back. So we'll see. Hopefully those things will add up, and we'll see. We'll see a relatively quick turnaround to the season, right? I
want to err on the side of caution. But if Reja thinks we can already achieve big things, why not go along with him? And I just want to thank you for your time, and just going forward, a lot of stuff to look forward to, even on our own front. In terms of Lazio Club Canada, and we're trying to regroup, and just like the team is, regroup and get ready for 2014 after such a impressive, not impressive, but a very memorable 2013 for different reasons, good, bad, and ugly, of course. But January 12th, hopefully we're going to have another pasta dinner for versus Bologna. And I mean, just going forward, trying to recruit as many people from all ages as opposed to how young we really do get a turnout of, which is great. We really do care about the youth here at Lazio Club Canada, but it really is for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, I mean, hopefully, we'll get together for that for the Bologna game. It looks like everything is set to go, so that'll be great. Yeah, the more opportunities we get together and and support the club, that certainly makes it all worthwhile. But hopefully we'll have a lot more to cheer for this year. I mean, 2013 will always be memorable because of May 26th. But I'm hoping that 10 years from now, that's the only thing we remember. We turn the page and we move on, and the only thing we remember from 2013 is that victory, because the rest is pretty, with the exception of maybe the Europa League, is pretty dismal stuff.
The tears of joy of De Rossi, Totti, and especially Balzaretti too will always be engraved in my mind, and our tears of joy, of course, is just no words can put into what that day in 2013 meant to me, and it meant to you, and it meant to so many. So on my part, I want to say Happy New Year to everybody going forward, and speriamo Forza Lazio in 2014.
Yeah, sempre Forza Lazio.